You're not going to believe what happened at the Denver City Zoo last Sunday, because for a moment the whole place just froze. A 415-pound silverback named Quito stepped out of the shadows and pressed his massive hand against the glass, right where 10-year-old Mason Carter stood. No growls, no pounding of the chest, just silence, thick with something deeper. Mason didn't flinch. He reached out, calm as still water, matching Quito's gesture. What followed next stunned everyone. But what if I told you this wasn't the first time they'd met, and that this gentle giant had held on to a memory no one else remembered? If you're moved by stories of animal intuition, human resilience, and forgotten bonds, don't miss what comes next. Subscribe now so you won't miss the truth behind this moment. But then, something changed. Quito didn't move away like he usually did. No pacing, no yawning, no disinterest. Instead, the massive silverback stood completely still, eyes locked on Mason like he was the only soul in the world that mattered. Around them, parents began pulling their kids back, murmurs of concern spreading through the crowd. Mason's mom whispered, "Come on, honey, let's go." But he didn't budge. His hand stayed right there, pressed against the thick glass, unwavering. And then came the moment no one could explain. Quito tapped the glass. Once, twice, then a third time, a rhythm. Slow, deliberate. It wasn't random, not like when he was bored or agitated. It was patterned, intentional. Mason tilted his head, like something clicked deep in his chest. He didn't smile, not quite, but his face softened, like he was hearing a song he used to love but hadn't heard in years. From the viewing tower above, one of the senior handlers, a woman named Dana, who'd worked at the zoo for over a decade, leaned in with a puzzled frown. Quito had never acted like this. He was a solitary male, quiet, aloof, mostly indifferent to visitors. But now, he was frozen in place, breathing slow, hand still pressed to the glass, repeating that strange tapping beat. Dana's eyes narrowed. She'd seen this before, years ago. And suddenly, she wasn't watching a gorilla anymore. She was watching a memory, trying desperately to break through the surface, and that's when Dana's heart skipped a beat. She tore herself from the window and sprinted down the staff hallway, her boots echoing off the tile like gunfire. She didn't know why exactly, but something in her gut told her this wasn't just odd behavior. It was familiar, frighteningly familiar. Inside the old staff records room, she flipped on the flickering fluorescent light, yanked open drawer after drawer, papers flying, until her fingers landed on a dusty yellow binder. Therapeutic Animal Interaction Program. Archived. Her breath caught. That program had been shut down 6 years ago. She flipped through pages, logs, reports, patient initials, behavioral records. Then she found it. A photo, slightly faded. A toddler with a mop of curly brown hair, no more than 4 years old, sitting cross-legged in front of Quito's glass enclosure. Their hands touched through the divider, tiny and massive, side by side. And under the photo, Mason Carter, age 4. Dana froze. The boy in the photo wasn't just any child, he was the boy standing outside right now. Same soft eyes, same stillness, only now older. Mason didn't remember, of course, but Quito did. That tapping rhythm? It wasn't random. It was a communication tool, a bonding technique used during trauma therapy. Dana clutched the binder to her chest and bolted back toward the enclosure. Her mind raced. This gorilla wasn't confused. He was remembering. And somewhere deep inside, Mason was starting to feel it too. You ever see a 400-pound gorilla wait like he's holding his breath? Because when Dana got back to the glass, that's exactly what Quito was doing. Not moving, not blinking, just waiting. Mason hadn't stepped away. His small hand was still pressed to the glass, right where it had been all those years ago. And somehow, even without the memory, he felt safe. Like his body remembered something his mind had long since buried. Dana dropped to her knees beside him. The old therapy binder clutched tight in her arms. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked gently. The woman next to Mason blinked, startled. Mason Carter. Dana's breath caught. There it was. Confirmation. She flipped open the binder and held up the old photo on her tablet. "Mason," she whispered, "this was you. You and Keto, 6 years ago." Mason leaned in, brows furrowed as he studied the grainy image. He didn't remember the moment, but something about it felt real. His hand drifted upward, mimicking the tapping rhythm he'd seen Keto do just moments before. And almost instantly, Keto responded. Tap, 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 the same beat, the same silent language. The crowd around them had hushed to a breathless still. What they were witnessing wasn't coincidence. It was recognition. Across 6 years and a sheet of glass, something sacred had survived. And then it happened, right there, in front of everyone. Keto lifted his hand from the glass and began tapping again, slowly, purposefully, the same rhythm from the therapy sessions. But this time, Mason didn't just watch. He joined in. His fingers moved without hesitation, matching Keto's pace like a forgotten dance returning to muscle memory. Something stirred in the air, thick as summer heat. People leaned in, a few gasped. Mason's mother, standing just feet away, covered her mouth with both hands, tears pooling in her eyes. She had never seen her son so still, so focused, so connected. Not since he was little. Not since before the trauma took his words. Dana didn't speak. She didn't need to. She knew what this was. This wasn't mimicry. It wasn't some fluke of instinct. This was a bond reigniting itself across time, lit not by logic, but by something far older, far deeper: trust. Keto swayed gently side to side, that low humming sound rolling from his chest, a sound they'd trained him to use when calming children. And Mason, he rocked too, back and forth. A mirror, not just in movement, but in peace. "Hi, Keto," the boy whispered, barely audible. "It's okay, I'm here now." And in that moment the years vanished. No enclosure, no crowd, just a boy and a gorilla, face to face, bound by something no language could explain. The glass fogged gently between them, their foreheads just inches apart. Two silhouettes, massive and small, locked in the kind of stillness that only comes from being truly seen. By the next morning, the story had gone viral, but what the cameras caught could never capture what it felt like to be there. News vans lined up outside the zoo gates. Headlines exploded across every platform. Gorilla recognizes boy after 6 years. Unbreakable bond reunites at Denver Zoo. But for Dana, for Mason's mom, and especially for Keto, this wasn't a news story. It was a homecoming. Requests for interviews flooded in, but Dana refused them all. This wasn't about science, she told one reporter who pushed too hard. It was about love. The kind that doesn't fade just because we forget. Keto's behavior shifted almost overnight. He was calmer now, more centered. Zookeepers noted how he began sitting by the viewing glass more often, his eyes scanning the crowd. Not with boredom or aggression, but with quiet anticipation. Mason, too, had changed. He started asking questions about the therapy, about why he was at the zoo back then, about what had happened in those early years his mind had locked away. His mother hesitated at first. How do you tell your child that his first best friend was a gorilla who once helped him speak again? But the dam had broken. They talked, they cried, and for the first time in a long time they began to heal. You'd think after all that, the story would just fade, become another feel-good clip lost in the endless scroll. But for those who were there, it never left them. And for Mason and Keto, it was only the beginning. The zoo quietly introduced something new, a monthly quiet hour visit, just for Mason. No crowds, no flashing cameras, just a boy and the gorilla who never forgot him. Each time, Mason would sit cross-legged on the pavement outside the enclosure, just like he did as a child. He'd raise his hand, fingers outstretched, and Keto would mirror him, slow, steady, like a ritual older than words. They didn't need to speak. That wasn't their language. Their rhythm, those gentle taps, the shared sways, the silent stillness, that was their conversation. And something beautiful began to take shape. Mason started drawing again. He brought pictures to the zoo, images of him and Keto sitting side by side, hands pressed against the glass. One afternoon he handed a drawing to Dana, saying softly, "I think he missed me." She smiled through tears. I think he never stopped. More than a reunion, this was a rebirth. Not just for Mason, but for the bond between mother and son. The trust that had been shattered years ago was slowly being rebuilt, one visit, one drawing, one rhythm at a time. This story reminds us that true connection transcends words, time, and even species. In a world that moves too fast, we often forget the quiet, unseen bonds that shape us. But memory, especially the emotional kind, has a way of enduring. Keto never forgot the child he once comforted, even when the world moved on. It teaches us to honor the relationships that shaped us, even if they've faded from view. Healing doesn't always arrive loudly. It comes in rhythms, in presence, in stillness. And sometimes the most meaningful moments are the ones we can't explain, only feel with our hearts.